UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The 2025-26 national budget has been unveiled, promising growth, stability, and change. But what does it mean for your business, your wallet, and your future? Anyway, expect all that and more in today's Business Roundup episode. My name is Maureen Bavidie. Welcome to the show. Let's dive into it. In our first report, the Minister for Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Matia Kasaija, has presented the 72.3 trillion budget for the next financial year 2025-26. The minister, while delivering the budget speech, pleaded with Ugandans to embrace the opportunities contained in the budget to promote wealth creation. Take a look.
On the budget day, the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, first highlighted some of the areas for improvement in the next financial year.
The need to strengthen the oversight of our wealth creation funds, notably the parish development model, the youth livelihood, UWEP, SAGE, so that the funds actually reach their intended beneficiaries. Two, to strengthen the implementation and oversight of high-impact projects under the NDP4, so that the intended objectives are achieved.
The Minister for Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Matia Kasaija, also gave accountability of the concluding financial year budget, which among others witnessed the private sector growth to shillings 23.3 trillion in March 2025 from shillings 21.9 trillion in June 2024.
In March 2024, Uganda met the criteria for graduation from this category of least developed countries. Despite global uncertainties, the Uganda shilling has been among the few most stable currencies in Africa.
The continued implementation of government interventions, especially in agriculture, industry and services like ICT, has aided the expansion of the size of the economy to shillings 226.3 trillion in financial year 2024-2025 from 203.7 trillion shillings in financial year 2023-2024.
Uganda has maintained its top ranking as one of the best investment destinations in Africa. Foreign direct investments were worth US $3.4 billion in 12 months to March 2025.
In the 72.376 trillion budget, the health sector was boosted with the funding of 5.87 trillion shillings, including the funds for the National Ambulance and Emergency Care System, which was halted in the last financial year.
Drug dispensing and monitoring the attendance of health workers. Strengthened the National Ambulance and Emergency Care System by providing additional ambulances to improve the national emergency response and referral system.
The development of the controversial War Specialized Hospital has been reported at 68%, as Minister Kasaija stresses that the training of specialists is ongoing. This hospital has since received over 700 billion shillings of the COFAS fund. The wealth creation programs have maintained funding, especially the PDM, which has been allocated 1.059 trillion shillings, Emyoga 100 billion, and Grow Project 231.3 billion shillings.
I therefore empower Ugandans to grow more coffee and, most importantly, add value to our coffee before we export it for higher earnings. Madam Speaker, For the year ending March 2025, the Middle East was Uganda's top export destination, followed by the East African Community, Asia, and the European Union.
Another area prioritized is the mineral-based industrial development, including oil and gas, where 875.8 billion will accommodate the construction of the oil refinery and refined products pipeline, among others. Space has been allocated to add Uganda Airlines funds to acquire more aircraft, open up more routes for passenger and cargo transportation, and as well, the operationalization of the Kabalega International Airport is due next financial year. These are entailed in the 6.92 trillion budget for the integrated transport and infrastructure services. Minister Kasaija is optimistic that Tororo-Gulu meter gauge railway line will be fully rehabilitated.
Take full advantage of the innumerable opportunities contained in this budget. Innumerable opportunities in this budget.
The revenue collection in the next financial year 2025-2026 is projected at 37.55 trillion shillings, including tax and non-tax revenue. This is amid the public debt, which is projected to hit 116 trillion by end of June 2025. Government says the debt is sustainable and is to remain so in the medium to long term.
The debt has financed investments that support private sector growth by providing requisite infrastructure. Over the last 10 years, the area which public debt has financed, including integrated transport infrastructure, 29.3%, electricity infrastructure, including power generation plants and transmission lines.
It is on record that Uganda Revenue Authority has never hit the target of revenue collection in the past 5 years. What remains is whether the registered ceiling in the next financial year will be met.
Inflation is expected to remain below the policy target of 5% per annum.
Daniel Mugoya, Gloria Gutabinji, UBC News.
Ernst & Young Uganda hosted a post-budget breakfast to unpack the government's new tax regime for financial year 2025-26. The event drew industry leaders, policymakers, and business owners eager to understand the implications of the latest tax amendments.
This year's budget has so many opportunities, but it will depend on how the government disburses these funds.
Ugandans are advised to leverage tax planning strategies to stay compliant with evolving regulations and actively engage with policymakers to ensure that their concerns are addressed.
We realize that government has taken a deliberate move to cast the net wider, and how is it doing so? It is bringing so many Ugandans onto the tax radar. How? By now considering the need to be the tax identification number effective 1st July. That means that every Ugandan, however deep you are in the village, you'll now be on the tax radar. Does it have any downward side? Probably yes. We are going to have a tax register which has so many people that are not probably eligible or are not qualifying. Why? Because already we are seeing that 33% of Ugandans are not in the money economy, but all those people are going to have needs.
Key changes in this financial year's budget include a 3-year income tax holiday for new citizen-established startup businesses and an exemption from capital gains tax on asset transfers to controlled companies aimed at fostering innovation and business formalization.
Something that the minister said in his speech, and I don't know whether people actually paid attention to it among the priority areas. IFRIS was one of them. Last year we had a lot of noise around IFRIS. It cooled down this year. This coming financial year, I foresee more noise coming up.
Stamp duty on mortgages and agreements has been removed to reduce the cost of debt. Furthermore, the penalty for IFRIS non-compliance has been reformed from a flat 6 million shillings per invoice to twice the tax owed, addressing concerns about disproportionate penalties.
Most of the traders down there in Chiku have been coming together as one, probably in groups. It's called groupage. They've been coming together in groups, and they bring in one consignment. Different people have goods in there, but they will be declared by one trader. What did that mean? It meant that by doing so, most of those would not be qualified for VAT registration. In Uganda, the VAT threshold for you to get into the VAT bracket is 150 million. You should be able to make 150 million per annum. Averagely, that is around 130K per day, which means that most of the traders who would have been considered under that one consignment would automatically be qualifying for VAT registration. But previously, that has not been the case.
Government aims to collect 37.2 trillion shillings in domestic revenue for the financial year 2025-26, financing approximately 60% of the national budget. Efforts are intensifying to broaden the tax base, particularly within the digital economy, through stricter enforcement of compliance mechanisms such as the electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing system and digital tax stamps. Wadulo Arnold Mark for UBC Business in Kampala.
Relatedly, stakeholders from both the public and private sectors convened at the Serena Hotel in Kampala for a post-budget dialogue aimed at assessing the potential of the 2025-26 national budget as a catalyst for business growth. We have more.
The national budget for 2025-2026 is projected at Uganda shillings 72.3 trillion shillings, with priority areas including agro-industrialization, tourism development, mineral-based development, and advancements in science and technology. Stakeholders emphasize the need to strengthen partnerships and bridge resource gaps to accelerate development.
Budgets must ultimately translate into impact, into jobs created, areas cleared, and opportunities unlocked for entrepreneurs and households alike. That's why we view the enhanced allocation of 1.4 trillion towards domestic areas as a signal of intent, an important step in restoring liquidity to the business community and rebuilding trust in the public.
Concerns were, however, raised over Uganda's growing borrowing appetite and the mounting debt burden. In the next financial year, the government is expected to borrow Uganda shillings 34 trillion. Present at the Absa Bank organized budget dialogue was the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, who addressed some of the concerns raised.
We are capital technology constrained. Our country does not have capital. We have small money, which is also expensive. Why is our money small? Because most of us don't save. We save in the morning, we are depleting it in the afternoon. These banks have savings accounts. They say, come and open a savings account at Absa. I open, but they give me ATM card. I save in the bank or in the morning. Then as I go home, I start to think, life is short. I might die. Then I change my mind. I go and put in the card and draw the money.
Although Uganda's fiscal health remains under pressure, the government remains optimistic, describing the current situation as temporary. In the 2025-2026 financial year, the Uganda Revenue Authority is tasked with collecting 34 trillion shillings in domestic revenue, up from Uganda shillings 29.2 trillion in the current financial year.
What is also important is to think about the government programs or initiatives, especially those that are meant to bring what we call the Muntu-wa-wansi into the contributing part of the economy.
Dennis Ikoa, UBC.
Now on the regional scene, alongside Uganda, 3 other East African Community member states, Rwanda, Tanzania and Kenya, also unveiled their national budgets the same day. Here is a breakdown of the key focus areas shaping their fiscal priorities for the 2025-26 financial year.
The government of the United Republic of Tanzania has today unveiled 5 key priorities for the 2025-2026 National Development Plan, which marks the 5th and the final phase of the 3rd National Development Plan 2021-2022 to 2025-2026. Focus areas in the budget are promoting a competitive and inclusive economy, enhancing industrial production and service delivery, boosting investment and trade, advancing human development, and fostering skills development. Tanzania's budget spending for the next financial year is seen at 56.49 trillion shillings in the fiscal year 2025-2026. To Kenya, amidst protests in the capital Nairobi, the Kenyan Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi tabled a budget statement containing spending plans of at least 4.29 trillion Kenyan shillings. The budget highlighted the Kenyan government's spending priorities for the fiscal year running from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. The Kenyan budget prioritizes boosting revenues to service debt while avoiding tax measures that triggered deadly protests same time last year. The Kenyan economy is projected to grow by 5.3% in the next financial year. And to Rwanda, Rwanda has approved a US $4.8 billion budget for the 2025-2026 financial year, up 21% from the current fiscal year budget. The 7,000 billion Rwandan francs budget aims to support strategic investments, including the Kigali International Airport and the expansion of the national carrier Rwandair. Other priorities include industrialization, boosting agricultural productivity, expanding electricity and clean water access, improving transport and modernizing education and healthcare. Dennis Igoa for UBC.
Civil society is calling on the Uganda government to ensure responsible spending and borrowing if the ambitious tenfold economic growth target under the 4th National Development Plan 4 is to be realized. Mark Arnold reports.
NDP4 prioritizes programs across agriculture, minerals, oil and gas, tourism, ICT and financial services, with a new focus on the creative arts sector.
The creative economy is one of the 10 priority areas that government is looking at in NDP4.
The creative industry, contributing about 3.5% of GDP, is now recognized as a key driver for revenue generation and citizen empowerment through job creation and innovation support.
Much as we want to do a program-based approach for government, we need to make sure there is the one person who says, oil and industry, what's happening in your sector, which focuses on the creative economy through oil and gas. Who is talking about creative industries in, for instance, agriculture?
NDP4 is part of Uganda's broader strategy to grow the economy from $50 billion in 2023-2024 to $500 billion by 2040, building on lessons from previous national development plans.
We see that value addition is really a critical thing that the government should really look at and invest more so that it can boost the value addition of our goods. And we see that at least if at all we look at the competitive advantage of our country, that if at all coffee is doing so well, why don't we put much more effort, much more emphasis on boosting our coffee sector?
While NDP3 of 2019-2020 to 2024-2025 made progress in infrastructure and private sector growth, it fell short of fully meeting its targets, achieving roughly 70 to 75% of planned outcomes, according to government assessments.
But where I agree with you is on the debt we have borrowed and we are not utilizing in a timely manner. That is the old portfolio we had when we had not yet strengthened our PIMS, Public Investment Management System, where we analyze the viability of a project and the timeliness in which it can be delivered, and then the results it's going to give us. Now, our team here at the ministry, working with our colleagues in the government, the NPA and others, we have strengthened the evaluation of projects. The incoming portfolio will be implemented in a timely manner.
Civil society organizations emphasize the critical role of enhanced domestic revenue collection in financing priority projects with minimal reliance on debt.
In the economy, you see that the country, most people are not doing so well. Even there is a lot of income inequality and the informality of the country, and whereby the tax man is mainly most of the income that the taxes that they raise is from the direct taxes, whereby it's from the formal employment, and the informal sector that is really about 80% of our economy is not being taxed. And we see that whereas the administration has been increased, education is there, but we see there is that lag.
Stakeholders stress that responsible fiscal management, transparency, and accountability will be vital to closing funding gaps, such as the 10.4 trillion shillings shortfall projected in the first year of NDP4. Wadulo Arnold Mark for UBC Business in Kampala.
Relatedly, Uganda's target of achieving a tenfold growth by the year 2040 from a $50 billion economy to over $500 billion is anchored mainly on industrialization. However, this key sector of economy is cash constrained due to the high cost of financing from the commercial banks. Let's hear more from the manufacturers.
The high cost of money is the major impediment in the growth and development of Uganda's manufacturing sector. This was disclosed at the second annual financial symposium themed Innovative Financing Solutions for Sustainable Manufacturing Sector.
Well, the quality of clients and others, but largely speaking, we have there's a reduction of the risk factors in the country, and therefore there should be some reasonable and affordable costs of capital, especially for the manufacturing sector.
With commercial banks' interest rates hovering over and above 17%, Uganda has one of the highest interest rates on loans in the sub-Saharan Africa.
High commercial lending rates, stringent loan processing procedures, limited access to development funds persist, particularly for small and medium enterprises. With only 22.9% of the SMEs accessing finance, there is an urgent need for alternative models that align with both the unique needs of our manufacturers and the NDP4's call for increased access to affordable financing.
The question is, how did we get here, and what are some of the consequences to the economy?
Capital that comes to the bank, we do pick it from the depositors in the market. Now, when you're picking money at a very high interest rate, you'll definitely have to give it out at a high interest rate. Government is in the market as well. They do borrow from the market. So when you look at the credit risk rating of government and the manufacturer, definitely funds will go into government, and that will determine the rates in the market. I think also,
as Uganda transitions from NDP3 to the National Development Plan 4, concerns are raised by stakeholders at the UMA Symposium about its effective implementation if the commercial banks' lending rates are abnormally high.
Our discussion is basically an economic discussion. We can do the production, we can do the distribution, we can do the marketing. However, are the finances existing to help us do all that? So that is the conversation. If you don't get the finances to support you in the area of production, distribution, and marketing, you may not necessarily hit the tenfold growth. And also don't forget, the demand of the goods depends on the purchasing power of the Ugandans.
In their interest that they have institutions, they are financing companies, they are financing that can grow the economy. Because when the economy grows, themselves will have the resources in the bank through different.
The manufacturing sector is not only a significant contributor to Uganda's GDP, accounting for over 24.5%, but also a major driver of job creation, employing more than 2 million people directly and many more indirectly. Dennis Igoa for UBC.
In our corporate news wrap, Uganda's insurance sector recorded a 10% growth in 2024, reaching 1.76 trillion shillings. According to the regulator, the surge reflects heightened business activities. Nasir Luwama reports.
In a bid to improve service delivery and strengthen sector resilience, the Insurance Regulatory Authority introduced an initiative to merge smaller insurance companies. This move has significantly contributed to the sector's improved performance in 2024.
That it doesn't matter you owning a company which is small and cannot afford to do things which you want the industry to do. If your company is small, you are better off merging your company with another entity, or you are better off injecting more money.
The industry's total value rose to 1.76 trillion shillings, up from 1.6 trillion shillings in 2023, marking a 10% growth.
We have seen more uptake of individual policies, and we have also seen more uptake of medical insurance. Medical insurance, in many cases, are micro in nature, and medical insurance are policies which are taken by individuals. We have also seen more products which are being promoted by bank assurance. Bank assurance, banks working with the insurance companies, they have developed products which are micro in nature, but are talking to the needs of Ugandans.
The four major insurance categories registered varying performances are non-life insurance gross premiums increased to 987 billion shillings in 2024, up from 932 billion shillings in 2023, representing a 5.8% growth. The other is life insurance premiums rose to 702 billion shillings from 612 billion shillings, reflecting a 14% growth. Health membership organizations expanded to 70 billion shillings from 57 billion shillings, indicating a 23.8% increase. While microinsurance recorded the highest growth, reaching 1.6 billion shillings in 2024 from 780 million shillings in 2023, a remarkable 131.4% increase.
And microinsurance is the insurance which every person buys. It is the insurance for the ordinary person. It is the insurance for the individuals like me, like you. I want to encourage all of us, make sure that we have at least one or two policies.
The insurance regulator has pledged to leverage technology to ensure industry-wide compliance, boost public confidence, and encourage wider uptake of insurance products. Abdul Nasser Lubwama, UBC Business.
Interest rates, first of all, are formulated in a very interesting way. Number one, they are considerations of your debt riskiness as a country, your rating as a country on the financial scales, and two, it also depends on the inflation, and three, on the borrowing rates of the government. So when these three all come together, they then form the basis, or the base points upon which then the other rates are built. Now, when they come to you, they will get to the base point, then they will add your risk, then they will add their premium to it until they get to your interest rate that you use and take home. So high interest rates literally mean that you are a debt-prone country, and that your risk is a little bit high. And as you all know, we are past 50%, or we are approaching the 50% mark of debt to GDP ratio. So these are issues that we have to deal with as a country, and also begin to do a lot of domestic revenue mobilization.
express penalty system went live, there was uproar from the public, and 4 days later, it was suspended. As Business Roundup, we suggest that before any tax measures or traffic regulations are introduced, the best thing to do is to consult and sensitize the public. We hope you are abreast with the budget and how it will impact your businesses, your livelihoods, and household. My name is Maureen Babidie. From me and the team, good night.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A+ Funeral Management, on behalf of the family of the late Charles Atenyi Rwakibali of Kyarusozi, Kyenjojo District,